Hello everyone, hope you're all having a wonderful day. Keegan from the Poke2 here, and today guys we're going to be going over my Chaos level 50 Brr-zerker and Blightcaller build, aka the Rage Storm. This build has a massive damage potential with the new action skill Plague Storm, and also the new melee weapon from DLC 4, the Rage Handle. It's not better than the Sultan Battery, but boy is it so much fun to use. It just swings so quick. Let's not muck around, let's jump straight into the skill tree, guys. Now before we get into the skill tree, guys, bit of a disclaimer, I am still playing around with Blightcaller and testing some other stuff out. So if I don't explain something correctly, by all means drop it in the comment section below. Let me know that I have explained something wrong. But again, I am still figuring a lot of stuff out for the Blightcaller. So if I do explain something wrong with the skill tree, I do apologize. I'm still learning. Bear with me. Now we are maxing out Ancestral Frost, guys. Putting 5 points here. It's going to boost our frost damage. We are also maxing out Icebreaker. We deal more damage the closer the enemy is to being frozen. When they are frozen, we deal up to 30% increased damage. Very, very nice. We are also maxing out Cold Snap. This is just for increased movement speed and frost efficiency. And while we're enraged, and we become enraged after we activate an action skill, these will be doubled. So instead of 9% movement speed, we're going to have 18%. And instead of 24% frost efficiency, we're going to have 48%, which is massive. We're going to be freezing enemies like no tomorrow. We are maxing out the Old Ways. The Old Ways is definitely the bread and butter for a lot of Berserker builds, if not all Berserker builds, especially with melee as well, because we're always going to be right up close to enemies, so we're always going to be getting that 30% increased damage bonus, and we're always going to be getting that 40% damage reduction. We are taking Unarmored Defense. Unarmored Defense I feel is really, really strong for a Berserker build, especially with survivability. 50% of our ward is going to be reserved, but we're going to gain 150% of it as health. So like I said, it's just going to be really, really good for survivability. Another skill that's good for survivability is Blood Frenzy. Now, Blood Frenzy is a kill skill. Whenever we get a kill, we're going to restore a portion of our health, and we're also going to increase our current enraged duration timer. So if we are enraged and we're killing enemies, you're just going to be staying enraged for longer, so we're going to be doing more frost damage through being enraged. But above all that, we are going to get health back on kill, which is just huge. And another skill that is really, really good for survivability. I know Berserker has some of the best survivability in all of the classes in Wonderlands, just my opinion, and that is Relentless Rage, guys. Now, Relentless Rage is why we're doing damage in Save Your Soul. It's going to replenish the Save the Soul meter, so as long as you keep doing damage, that meter ain't going down, so you're going to have enough time to get a kill, get back up, continue with the Chaos Run, or whatever you're doing. So that is huge. Other really, really cool thing that you get from Relentless Rage is now when you come out of Save Your Soul, we become enraged. So it's another way to become enraged without using an action skill. And moving on to the last thing we're taking in the Berserker tree, it's going to be Blast Chill. Now, if you're running a Berserker melee build, you're probably going to be taking Blast Chill. It is just so insanely strong. Whenever we melee an enemy, we have a 20% chance to release a Frost Nova, dealing frost ability damage to all nearby enemies. Now, it says it only does 25% of melee damage dealt. It must go through some other, like, all your damage multipliers again, because Blast Chill hits insanely hard, up anywhere between 1 to 3, 4 mil. I've seen it hit with the Rage Handle. You're probably looking at more if you're using the Sultan Battery, which is one of the strongest melee weapons in the game. Overall, Blast Chill is a fantastic skill to take if you are running melee. If you're not using melee, you're probably never going to use Blast Chill. Now, moving on over to the main event, guys, the Blightcaller tree. Yes, so we are taking the Plague Storm action skill. This action skill is nuts. You're going to summon a massive friggin' Plague Storm above the enemy or wherever you aim it at. It's going to deal poison status effect damage over time. That's all good and dandy, but any of the non-ability damage that you do while Plague Storm is out, it will drop it back down on the enemy, dealing ability damage. Now, if you are running a really strong build, Plague Storm is just insanely strong, because if you can pump out, like, say 10 mil damage, that 10 mil damage is going to go up into Plague Storm, and then they're going to drop it back down, applying all your damage multipliers, and also applying any ability damage multipliers on top of Plague Storm, and it hits like a truck. That is why you get such insane damage output from Plague Storm. Probably not explaining it very well, but essentially is a massive echo. Now moving on over to the skills guides, we are maxing out Wraith Mail. Now Wraith Mail is a kill skill. Whenever we get a kill, we are going to restore 21% of our ward, which is huge because that's massive for survivability. So as long as you're getting kills, you're always going to probably have full shield, which is very nice. Obviously, because we're running a melee build, we're not taking Geist in the Shell, but Geist in the Shell is really, really strong. So we are putting 2 points into Virulence. It's just a filler, really. We don't really need status effect chance and status effect duration, but again, it's just a filler. It's not actually that bad to have. Next, guys, we are putting 4 points into Flawless Edge. The Fate Maker gains increased damage dealt based on how full her ward is. So if we have full ward all the time, we're gonna get 24% increased damage all the time. Because this is a melee build, it's kind of hard to keep your ward full all the time, but still taking 24%, or even when that drops down when your shield's not as full, it's just a global damage multiplier. So it's just a really good skill to take regardless. Now maxing out Active Decay, it's just going to give us a 20% increase to poison damage. Now we're not using any poison weapons or melee weapons or anything like that, so it's mainly just to buff our Buffmeister and the Plague Storm damage. We are putting 1 point into Bog Down, maxing it out. Dealing non-status effect poison damage has a chance to create a Water Nova, soaking all nearby enemies. We can get this out quite easily with the Buffmeister and if you use Plague Storm, so that soaked is just going to boost our Frost melee weapons damage, which is fantastic. It works really, really well with this build. Now we are also putting 2 points into Amped Up, guys. Whenever the Fate Maker applies a lightning status effect, her movement speed is increased and a percentage of her maximum war capacity is restored per second for a duration. This is great because we are using the live wire, so we can put a lightning status effect on the target quite easily. The movement speed isn't needed, but it's nice. It just means we can close the gap on enemies quicker and get to them to melee them. But the best thing about this is getting your ward restored. So we are going to be recharging our ward every time we apply a lightning status effect. We can get 3 stacks of this, so we can actually get 3% per second. And that is just going to go hand in hand with Flawless Edge, because the longer we can keep our shield full, the longer we can get that 24% damage increase. And then if we kill the enemies, we are also getting our ward restored as well. So we do actually have quite a bit of survivability with this build, in the form of having a lot of ward regeneration, as well as getting a bit of health regeneration on kill skill. Moving on, we are maxing out Frostbite. Whenever the Fate Maker applies a Frost status effect, her melee damage and critical hit chance are increased for a duration. This is the bread and butter of the build, obviously, because we are using a Frost melee weapon. So whenever we apply a Frost status effect, we are increasing our melee damage and we are increasing our critical hit chance. Now, I don't know, but does anyone know if the critical hit chance is additive or multiplicative? It's going to make a big difference if it's one of those. For now, I'm probably going to assume it's multiplicative. So again, I don't think the critical hit chance is going to be that great. Again, if it's additive, it's huge. That's a game changer. The main thing we're taking Frostbite is because we do get up to 27% extra melee damage, which is massive. That is actually massive. And then moving on to the last thing that we're taking for the Blightcaller tree, it is Toxicity. Toxicity is a nutty AF skill. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Toxicity is a nutty skill. Whenever the Fate Maker applies a poison status effect, her critical hit damage, companion damage, and action skill cooldown rate are increased for a duration. So you can get up to 25% critical hit damage, which is massive. You can get up to 36% companion damage. Again, we don't need the companion damage, but that would be huge for a companion build. And then we're also getting 36% action skill cooldown rate. So we can take Plague Storm off cooldown more often. It is such a fantastic skill. I really, really like Toxicity. The main reason we are taking Toxicity is for the action skill cooldown rate and the critical hit damage. The critical hit damage is massive. 25% extra critical hit damage is bananas. So another way you can play this build, guys, is you can use the Brr-zerker capstone. Now, obviously, you won't get Toxicity. So if you do take the capstone, you won't get that 25% crit hit damage or the action skill cooldown rate, but that doesn't matter if you take Blood of the Fallen, because this is just going to let you use Plague Storm all the time, because as long as you're getting kills, it refreshes the cooldown. If you have Plague Storm out and you're getting kills, it's just going to keep it out for longer. So this is definitely better for mobbing. So it's up to you guys what you want to use. If you guys are all about damage, use this build. But if you guys do want to play around with basically just keeping Plague Storm on a constant cycle, try Blood of the Fallen. It actually works out pretty well. But again, this is just edges out a bit more with that 25% increased critical hit damage. Moving on to the hero points, guys, we are maxing out strength, getting all the crit hit damage that we can get. We are maxing out wisdom to get all the status effect damage that we can get, because Plague Storm, it does drop down poison status effect damage. And we are putting the rest of our points into attunement. Bit of a spoiler is because we're using the protagonizer necklace, so the more points we have into attunement, the more ability damage and crit hit damage we're going to get, so that's why we're using attunement. Now moving on over to the gear, guys. Now there's not much to really go over because the main focus of this build is the Rage Handle. This is the new DLC 4 weapon. Rage Handle melee attacks increase melee attack speed and melee critical chance by 11.3% for 5 seconds, stacking 15 times. Hitting a boss applies triple the stack. So you would have seen in the clips at the start, you melee insanely quick when you're hitting a boss. It's almost feels like your game's about to just crash. I know the Rage Handle is obviously part of the new DLC, so if you cannot get your hands on the Rage Handle, the Assault and Battery is probably actually better. Again, you're not going to get the insane melee attack speed, which is probably the funnest thing to play around with the Rage Handle. But the Assault and Battery is it is a lot stronger by a good margin. So again, if you can't get the Rage Handle, the Assault and Battery is better in terms of damage, but the Rage Handle is definitely a lot more fun to use. And for the enchant, I am playing around with why Plague Storm is active. All poison damage is increased by 5% each second for 10 seconds. Afterwards, this effect lasts an additional 10 seconds. Now, Plague Storm lasts for 20 seconds. So the first 10 seconds, you're going to be scaling your poison damage up till it gets to 50%. And then for the next 10 seconds that Plague Storm is out, you're going to be having that 50% increased poison damage. So I'm just using this because we're using Plague Storm. We're not really using poison damage besides the Buffmeister and Plague Storm. So if you do have 2 charges on your Buffmeister, after getting a melee kill, refresh 1 spell charge probably will still be the way to go. Or anything that's going to increase melee damage while you hit bosses or just hit enemies in general. Now, I don't use the Stab-O-Matic in this build. I literally just said in my last build I wasn't going to do a Stab-O-Matic build. I told you I wasn't going to do it. I've just got the Stab-O-Matic here because Ameldia, the friggin' Sandwich, is probably the most annoying boss you have to deal with this build. It just sucks. So taking the Stab-O-Matic is kind of needed because you can't hit her on the platforms. And obviously you want to take the Stab-O-Matic in case you deal with any flying enemies. The Stab-O-Matic has really opened up a lot of melee build potential because before we couldn't hit the flying enemies. Now we have a way to hit those flying enemies, and there's enemies that we can't reach. Again, this build is mainly focused on melee, but yes, there is some instances where you will probably want to have a Stab-O-Matic, so that is why I have it here. It also does pretty decent damage on its own, but again, if you want to switch to a Spellblade. Now moving on over to the pistol, guys, we do have a Glittering Fear Knot. Now I don't really use this, I just got it here because it does apply crossbolts that increase melee damage, so it's kind of fun to play around with, try and get some like cool boss nukes or something like that. It's also good to pair up the Stab-O-Matic if you're fighting Ameldia. She's really annoying to deal with, so having the increased melee damage with the Stab-O-Matic can just melt her first phase even quicker. That is the only reason I'm taking the Fear Knot. Really don't use it for this build, it's just there because we can use it to increase melee damage if we need. The main weapon, obviously, that we are going to be using is the Live Wire. I think by now everyone knows how the Live Wire works. When you melee, every second hit it's going to send lightning, chain lightning, between every enemy in the room, and it's going to send that melee damage over to them as well. So you'll be meleeing enemies with the Poison Buffmeister on, and it's going to send lightning damage over them, the Poison Buffmeister damage, your ice damage. So yeah, the Live Wire is kind of the bread and butter of most melee builds. Definitely this melee build as well. For the enchant we do have on this, it's just on spellcast increase melee damage by 30%. I do have a Twisted Delusioner, aka the friggin' Super Soaker. Purely just taking this to soak the boss at the start of the boss fight so we can nuke him quicker. Don't really need it, but again, it just helps getting quicker boss kills. Now moving on over to the ward, guys, we are taking the Bad Egg. Now, the Bagged Egg, I use it in a lot of my melee builds, especially my Toxic Brawler and my Dark Punch build I just did. When our ward is depleted, we are going to gain 35% bonus melee damage as Dark Magic damage. And this is obviously a God roll. I know we also get an additional 20% melee damage on the ward depletion. So massive, massive for this melee build. Now the class mod we are using for this build is the Warp Paradigm. Now I use this for the Toxic Brawler and the Dark Punch build. Ability and spell damage are increased by 35% of our melee damage. Now spell, get him out of here. We don't care about spell damage. We care about ability damage because Plague Storm is going to, you know, echo all our damage that we do as ability damage. So it's already getting boosted from the Warp Paradigm. Now, I don't have a Blightcaller Warp Paradigm just yet. I'm really trying to get one. It would be fantastic to have similar passive to what this Warp Paradigm has, mainly looking for melee damage. I don't really care about the health regeneration. The all damage dealt is obviously nice, but melee damage is probably the main passive you want to get. This, again, this class mod is really optimized for this build, I know. The combo you're looking for the Warp Paradigm is this crazy little SOB here. Brr-zerker and Blightcaller can have +1 to Blast Chill. It can get bonuses to Ancestral Frost and bonuses to Frostbite. So melee damage, frost damage, Blast Chill, it's kind of nuts. But if you can get this on the Warp Paradigm, you are laughing. I really think if you had this on this Warp Paradigm, this build would be friggin' nuts. I feel like you could get some really insane echoes from Plague Storm. Moving on over to the necklace, guys, we are using the Protagonizer. Now, the Protagonizer works really well with this build because the Plague Storm and our Blast Chill both scale off ability damage. So we do have one here with Frost and Blightcaller. It's only whatever point you put into attunement. So if you started off with 10 points into attunement at the start of your character, and you put 20 hero points in, you've put 20 points into attunement. You don't have 30, you've only put 20 points into attunement. So keep that in mind. So we have 26 extra points into attunement. So we're getting some very decent bonuses from the Protagonizer necklace, which is going to boost Plague Storm, going to boost Blast Shield. It's super fantastic. If you guys didn't know, Blightcaller power does increase your Whispers of Rot elemental damage stack. It increases Plague Storm, which is what we're using, Bog Totem, and Geist in the Shell. Moving on over to the spell, guys, we are taking a Buffmeister. I know I need to change me using Buffmeisters all the time in my builds, but I honestly don't know what else to use. I was thinking maybe the Smithy's Eyrie, because we do have bonuses to spell damage with the Warp Paradigm, but it just didn't really work because it's dealing fire damage, and we're applying Soaked all the time with Poison, so I just don't think it worked with this build. I tried, at least I tried, right? Pat on the back for trying. But yes, we are using a Buffmeister. 2 spell charges. It's got Ka-chow, Bonk, boosting ability damage and melee damage, which is massive. Going to increase Plague Storm, just our overall melee damage in general. And for the rings, guys, I am taking a Finger Ward with just a plus 22.7. Y Ward is full. Effects are going to be increased by 66%. I'm still using the Shark Lesson Ring that I was using in the Toxic Brawler build. Gives us a plus 25% to melee damage, and also an additional bonus 15% rotating between elements. We're actually getting 40% melee damage bonus from this ring, which is massive for our melee damage build. And that is basically it for the build video, guys. If this video did help you out, could you please leave a like on the video? It greatly helps the channel out. I have loads more Blightcaller builds in the pipeline, in the works at the moment. I can't wait to show them off to you guys. Again, thank you for all the support on the channel. It really means a lot, guys. You guys are insane. And that is it from me, guys. Until next time, take care, stay safe, peace out.